Welcome to episode 124. I'm your host, Gustavo Dantas, and today we have Todd Fox. You hear the full intro in a little bit, but Todd is a third degree black belt in Jiu Jitsu. He is the author of the book Protection for and from Humanity, and he's the owner of Tour Protection, which is a company focused on providing protection service for celebrities and VIPs. So we talk about his background, Jiu-Jitsu in the 90s, street awareness, sketchy situations. So a really cool interview. So stick around. Now I want to share a message with you. And first of all, as you already know, I have two podcasts. I have in English and Portuguese, and often I kind of bounce some ideas back and forth of some of the things that guests in the other podcast said, and I bring it back and forth. So with that said, I want to ask you something first. It's a question for you to reflect, which is what is one of the most meaningful accomplishments that you have ever achieved in your life? That doesn't have to do with athletics or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just could be your college degree. It doesn't matter. Something that was extremely meaningful to you. And every time you accomplish something meaningful, you know that it didn't just kind of land on your lap, not doing anything, suddenly something landed there. And chances are that you had to stay focused for quite some time, disciplined for quite some time, and be patient. Now, why am I saying these three words? So back to my Portuguese vlog, I had a topic one time that I did a series of videos that was called FB, become an FDP to become successful. So FDP in English should be equivalent to SOB. So I just kind of play with the words and stuff like that and did a video about this. So I'm just bringing this concept to you guys about the focus, the discipline, and the patience, because I did have an interview last week and one of the guests talk about the patience. So it kind of inspired me to share this with you. I had the opportunity to interview the UFC lightweight champion, Charles Oliveira. What people don't know, he's Brazilian. He just recently won the title against Michael Chandler about maybe a month ago from when I'm recording. And I had the opportunity to interview him last week, which was awesome because, man, the guy is all over the place, the news and everywhere in Brazil, and a lot of attention. So it's cool for him to give the time for like a small podcast, basically, to share his experience and stuff like that, which was awesome. And during the conversation, we talk about, for people who don't know, he got in the UFC in 2010. So from 2010 to I believe 2017, he had 10 wins, 8 losses. He had one no contest. So it was a roller coaster, win here, lose, win, lose, lose. And since 2018, he has been 9-0 and then won the title. So I was asking him, man, what was that click that made you suddenly just kind of like boom, really take off, that got your confidence going? So first he said that how was dealing with uh, mentally with all that stuff of being a 10 and 8 and have the highs and lows. And he mentioned about patience because he knew, he said, I just had a conviction that my time would come. I wasn't peak yet of my career and I was still learning a lot, but I knew that I just had to be patient. And then I asked, what was the moment that you really felt your confidence kind of like going up? And it was very interesting, his answer, because he mentioned it was after his last loss. And he mentioned that there was around the same time his daughter was born. And for people who don't know, Charles Oliveira, he comes from the favelas, Brazil, the slums. So man, tough areas. So his goal basically, since he started, like provide a good life to his family. And he started with jiu-jitsu. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He competed in jiu-jitsu with a gi his whole life. And then eventually he migrated to MMA. But his inspiration was like to provide a good life to his family. And then when his daughter was born, he said like, his motivation, his why just got, so much stronger than now. And I really need to get it, but not like pressuring himself, is just really helping him to believe more that like everything that I've been doing all this time is not in vain. I have to be patient and I'll get there. And that's what happened. So now my question to you is, do you even know your why? Maybe you have a goal or dream that you're striving for, and maybe you're going through some tough times right now. Are you able to stay focused? Are you able to stay disciplined? And that's one of the things that when things get tougher, basically your why is going to give you that feel to keep going. That's basically what happened with Charles Oliveira, having that extra motivation, that why just kept pushing it, kept helping, giving him strength to be patient, to eventually get to his goal. So that brings back to you, how patient have you been with your goal? Whatever, if you're, doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not, or an athlete or not, but you gotta believe that your time will come, and just keep putting the work, staying focused, disciplined for a long time. Easy than said. We all want quick results, but one of the biggest lessons that I got in jiu-jitsu, that I learned from competing, that I always think about is, and if you train jiu-jitsu, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You don't always get exactly the the outcome that you want at the time that you want, the way you want. It's not like that. So you have to be patient, keep putting the work. And that is the main message to you today. Like, if you're on grind for your meaningful goal, there's no other way around. You're going to have to stay focused and disciplined for quite some time, whatever uh, bigger goals, of course, longer you have to stay disciplined and patient to believe that is going to happen. So now stay tuned with Todd Fox interview. Was Let me introduce you to today's guest, Todd Fox. Todd is a third degree black belt under Rodrigo Vaghi. Todd has competed professionally in MMA, gi, and no gi competitions. He's also a former Marine who has spent his career in executive protection with his company Tour Protection, who provides world-class protection service to celebrities and VIPs. In the summer of 2020, after 2 decades of training in the military and law enforcement communities, he opened Phaseline X, his training for private US citizens. Todd, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir. So you mentioned that you're in St. Louis.
I am. I'm based out. Me personally, I'm based out of St. Louis. All our guys are kind of scattered across the country.
Okay, so we're recording this in June 2021. How's the situation, COVID situation in your area?
It's probably like most of the country. It's kind of become political. So where you see the epicenters of people in Missouri, where I'm at, is St. Louis and Kansas City. And the cities they skew to one side, and so they're very protective, and mask mandates are very heavy, and social distancing. And then if you go toward the center, which is more rural community, it's completely open, and they didn't have anything. So it depends on where you're at between St. Louis and Kansas City. But things are obviously opening back up everywhere, and it's no exception here. Things are starting to loosen up a little bit.
Right on. All right, so yeah, let's start from the beginning. Just tell us how martial arts got into your life, and then eventually jiu-jitsu and fighting. But how young were you when you got exposed to martial arts?
I was in junior high, and I started with karate, which initially started as kind of kempo karate, and there was a judo component, a guy that taught judo as well, and then it morphed into kind of kyokushinkai, and then probably 10 years into martial arts, the guy that I was training with found out that Rodrigo Vaghi was in St. Louis, and this is like '95 time frame. And he's like, man, you got to go train with Rodrigo. You know, he's a Hickson Gracie black belt. He's a competitor. I can't show you what he can show you. You know, go over there, learn that magic, learn the stuff those guys are doing because it works. And and then while I was training jujitsu, probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago, then I started Muay Thai as well on top of it. So I guess it's been close to about 30 some odd years, since 32 years since I started training martial arts, and 25 or 6 for jujitsu.
Right on. And then when did competition, especially back then? I've been here in the US. I arrived here in January '99. So back then there's not as many competitions, especially in the mid, because even in Brazil, people don't know, but the Brazilian Federation officially started in '94. So some of the tournaments start coming after in US around that time. So of course there's not as many. So how was for you getting involved with the competitions back then?
Yeah. So You're absolutely right. In the Midwest, where I'm at, very little in the way of jujitsu specific competition. There was a lot of wrestling, so they're great college wrestlers because you think about you have Oklahoma here, you have Nebraska here, you have Ohio here. A lot of the best wrestling is here in the Midwest. So you had a lot of like no gi and even submission wrestling competitions early on, but you didn't have a lot of gi jiu-jitsu. And when you did, it was pretty much white belts and occasionally a blue belt. And so you had to travel for competitions to the East Coast or West Coast. But around 99 timeframe, while I was in the Marines, I had to move to California. And obviously, because Rodrigo came from Hickson, he sent me to train with Hickson's. So I was at Hickson's training with him. And that was really easy in California. I know you're in the Phoenix area, and now there's a ton of competition there, but there was nothing at the time like California. Even New York wasn't online with California. So once I got out there, it was really easy to get into the US Open or nationals or Pan Am's. All that stuff was there. The only thing it wasn't was Worlds, and that was because it was in Brazil. But as you know, there's a lot more money to be made in the States. So when it transitioned over, obviously it came here. But I started probably within 6 months of being with Rodrigo, fighting in No Holds Barred, NHB or Vale Tudo. Um, so I got a very quick taste of what it was like to transition from traditional martial arts to kind of more combat focused martial arts.
And how was for you mentally going into this kind of, like right now, you know what to expect MMA, but back then, man, you you have no idea what to putting yourself into it, you know.
No,
So how was
no.
it mentally?
Well, I always tell guys, like when I first came to jujitsu, I had beaten a lot of guys in striking, like karate or boxing. When I came to jujitsu, I had like this 15-year-old kid kick my ass. And so I was like, oh my God, what is this? And then they started with the NHB, and NHB at the time in the Midwest was illegal. So you either had to do it in one of the few states where it was legal, or you had to do it on an Indian reservation. So I was like, whoa, what is this crazy stuff? And I didn't really understand at the time that I was doing it how new it was, right? Because for Rodrigo, he had come from that background with Hickson, and so it was normal. And so I just thought I entered into something that was normal, which obviously wasn't the case. So it was very cool. It was very unique, and it definitely opened my eyes to the reality of kind of fighting and some of the stuff we were doing that maybe wasn't as realistic, and some of the potential for things to occur, like the layers in fighting and the distances and kind of how things change as you move through phases.
Yeah, it's interesting talking about evolution. I was talking to someone this week about, I like to watch surfing. And then if you look back, jujitsu 20 years ago, surfing 20 years ago, it's crazy. Skateboarding, MMA, man, it was just so crazy. Just so different. You know what I mean? All the thing. And I remember, so we have UFC 1993. So the first event I was able to watch, and that's a lot of people don't know, but that's what it did before the UFC. That's what kind of like give this snap in Brazil, especially in Rio, to grow, was the 1991 Vale Tudo in Brazil, Jiu-Jitsu against Luta Livre, that Fábio Gurgel fought, Murilo
Yes.
Bustamante, and Valide.
Yes.
And that was in my neighborhood. I was outside. I was like, how old was I? I think it was maybe 18 or something, or 17. I can't remember, but I was
What
outside.
neighborhood was that, buddy? What
That was
neighborhood?
Grajaú
Okay.
in Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah.
And so I lived like literally 15 minutes walking, from the venue. So I went there. I couldn't get in because it was so packed, like thousands of like hardcore jiu-jitsu people, because it was very niche. No one, people really didn't know until even that point in Brazil. People think that everyone knew about jiu-jitsu. Not really. It was still kind of like underground, strong base in Rio, but other states are uh, very small.
Who was fighting on the other side? Was it like Hugo Duarte
Yeah,
and like
Hugo was supposed to fight Marcelo Bering, and then Marcelo got injured, so he wasn't able to fight. But there was Eugenio Tadeo, which was
Oh yes, yes.
tough dude,
Very tough, man.
old school, that fought Valide, was the first fight of the night. It was, man, it was just it was intense experience. But I tell you what, after that, that's when jiu-jitsu was in the map in Brazil, because they show on TV. The biggest channel in Brazil is called Global. They didn't show live, but it was kind of like hour and a half after the event happened. So I'm anxious waiting at home with my VCR ready to record, And the funny thing is that the commentator, supposedly they said like, hey, you're not allowed to, it has to be open hand. You cannot uh, fist. And they're like, okay, sure. Yeah, yeah. Cause you're worried about a TV, man. As soon as it start the fight, boom, headbutts and punches. And then they're like, well, this, and after that, basically the guy who was able to manage this for the TV got fired. They didn't have well, it wasn't MMA, but it was Vale Tudo. They didn't have anything like that on TV on global until basically the MMA era when the money start flowing because they just they're just traumatized and what they saw was they were like, oh my god, because there's like literally that was two 15-minute rounds. I think that's all that was it, and that's what really put jiu-jitsu on map, start getting stronger. And then when 93 came around and then got a lot stronger, but it was already getting stronger from 91, and then the creation of the federation in 1994, and then worlds in 96, and then so forth. But man, it was just looking back, I always, like when I teach some of the self-defense classes, some of the things that we do in our academy, I like to show footage, and I show them like UFC 1. I was like, all right, raise your hands if you have never seen. I'm like, man, I'm old. These people have never watched UFC 1, so I got to do a little history lesson to them and share with them, like, look what this
True.
guy's doing here. This
Very
is
true.
jiu-jitsu 101. It gets no better than this. You double leg, you close it, this, like you control it. So that was incredible. So how you see, it's cool for you to see too, how you see this evolution of what was back then, in martial arts and now.
Yeah, it is interesting. I agree with you all that stuff because that's kind of how I came up too. What you're referencing with the guys and who the guys that were training me and teaching me and helping me. Um, w- like I see two different things happening, and one thing is all the guys that I was fighting with in the mid 90s, all of us had jobs to work 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And then we'd train 6 days a week and we would train usually about 3 hours a night and sometimes four, depending on what we had. And we would do our own running or lifting weights or whatever on this side. But we were really heavy to one side. Like, yes, we would go to the boxing gym and get, a couple boxing sessions in a week, but we were really heavy on the grappling. And we didn't do a lot of work in the transition spaces, right? Like working up against the cage or the ring and doing that kind of stuff. We missed over some of that stuff. So we missed some of the little stuff, but we were so good at the basics. Every time we were doing basics, we were doing 100 to 200 reps of whatever we were doing. We never did 10 or 15 or 20. So we were doing a ton of basic work. But the thing with the guys now is it's a full-time job because they can actually make a living. And we were making between $500 and $2,000 a fight. So you can't quit your regular job with that. And so now the guys are training beyond an Olympic level athlete, right? Because they have a personal trainer, right? They have a massage therapist, they have a dietitian, they have a jiu-jitsu coach, they have a Muay Thai coach, they have a wrestling coach, they have a boxing coach, and then they probably even have like a psychological coach, a psychologist that's a sports psychologist that's kind of working with their head. So we didn't understand any of that the same way. And also we didn't have the same thing to benefit. So the level has gone way up in terms of athleticism. And also there's more understanding of techniques and they can create more situations. Most of that, I think, my opinion is most of that's great. And most of it's very good. With the gi and gi jujitsu, my opinion, I know guys, a lot of guys don't agree with me, but I don't know that it's gotten a lot better. It's gotten a lot more fancy and like, a lot more upside down inverted stuff, a lot more berimbolo. And for my job, because I'm so focused on real scenarios, because we're fighting maybe with guns or knives or bats, that doesn't work with what we were doing before for jujitsu. And the one thing that worked from the old days is we did the same stuff with a gi on, with no gi, and an MMA. We were literally doing the same things. So it translated across three sports. I don't know that that's true today. I think MMA has evolved very, very far past that. Jiu-jitsu's evolved for sure, but the mindset of like the combat portion, the martial portion of the art, I don't know. I think I see a little bit of the same progression that I saw with some of the striking arts, where it's really sport focused and really point focused, and maybe things that we wouldn't ever do in the street. Now we're doing in a tournament to score an advantage or 2 points or whatever it is. So I know a lot of guys don't agree with me, and that's fine. Everybody has their own opinion on that. But I've seen this thing that we are talking about evolve and devolve at the same time.
Yeah, I had opportunity to spend a week with the Valenti brothers in Miami, training there. Is for people who don't know, I think maybe episode 32. If you guys have a chance to listen, if you haven't listened, good stuff. They focus mainly. It's an incredible academy, the prettiest facility that I've ever seen. They do an incredible job there. And it's really cool that he talks about, he has his vision too of jiu-jitsu, but I say like, man, basically anything that you can chokes that could be applied with clothes or a jacket, we implement in our training. Is there anything that, like, for example, the lapel game or whatever, like, is this is not for what we do? It's not that it's wrong, right or wrong, just for what we do. It's just not practical, So we prefer, like, yes, there's someone has a jacket. What kind of chokes can we do? It has a suit. What kind of choke? So whatever, if they're closed, so they try to bring it in, whatever they feel that is practical. And
Yes.
when you go to the competition side, it's well, basically the competition just breeds this evolution because in the early I started training in 1989. So the difference when I see from before the sport, even before have a Brazilian nationals, I mean, the game was very different. Everyone pass guard, both knees down. You smash, you get to the half guard, and then you pass. And then with time, people start to like, okay, how you deal with this? Oh, there's a half guard thing here. Okay, now we can develop, we can evolve this half guard, And that was funny. I had the opportunity to interview Roberto Correa, Gordo. He's one of the trailblazers from Barra, Gracie, now it's Gracie Barra, that he did basically the one that he didn't create the half guard, but he definitely helped the evolution of variations. And that was interesting because he was like, so he's practiced at a school, he go to the tournament and then he sweeps someone, people like, dude, what the hell is that? And then they get ready for the next tournament to counter that move. But guess what? Someone already tried to counter at the school. So when they try to counter and he comes, they already have something. And
Yes.
then people start to uh, filming. Now people start studying. Let me study this guy, and then people start getting on their feet to passing more, squatting down. Like, oh, you need a different type of guard, and they just started to evolve and evolving,
Yes.
and then basically that's where we at right now. And the athletes always, as far as competition goes, if the rules are there, the athletes always will find a way to adapt to the rules, game the systems in some way, you know. But it's nice to see that at least jiu-jitsu from what was it. So yeah, been here since 1999. I came here to Arizona. uh, I mean, maybe we had not even 10 schools in the state, a little bit less. Now we have probably 150 in the state. So it's just crazy, crazy amount of schools and development. So now let's talk about when did the idea of getting into this field of security came about? When did it start to kind of like brainstorming more ideas and eventually to become a business?
Yeah, so for me, I had learned most of the skills that are necessary from the business, most of them, not all of them, from the military. So the Marines did a lot of things that were very security centric and protecting people, protecting places, protecting things. So I had that knowledge. And then I was working in LA, and in LA, there are a lot of very wealthy people that have bodyguards, that have security, that have protection because they have hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And those people would commonly go down to Mexico. They'd go to Mexico for business trips, they'd go to Mexico for vacation. And I just, because I'm lucky, I met a person and they said, "Oh, you speak Spanish? Well, we need a translator. Oh, and you fight. So if we get into a problem, you can handle that." And that's wrong too, by the way, because if I'm fighting someone, I'm not really taking care of my client. So the idea was wrong. I got in the wrong way because they looked at it from that perspective. But that was kind of how I got into that side of things. And then eventually it morphed into a broader business because I took one big client and then I leveraged that name to get another one. And I developed a team in a lot of different areas. So, we went all over the world and we still do, short of COVID. And traveling to all these different places, you meet different people, you work with those people, you train those people, kind of like you would in jiu-jitsu. If you had an association, you go to one place and you train those guys, and you go to another place and you train those guys, and before you know it, you have this large association that you have guys that you're training and they're developing. And when you go to those places, not only you have a place to train, but you have friends and family and things like that. So now we're about 80% entertainment. So we do music tours, whatever bands you like that play, they good chance they're our client. And then film tours are not quite tours, but they shoot on location. So let's say they go to Brazil and they're shooting maybe in Rio, right? And in Rio, they can be shooting wherever. The last spot I was in Rio is very nice and they didn't need a lot of security. But let's say I go and I find guys from Kore or guys from Hota that are going to help me. And I have this team that I work with and we know how we do business and they give me the intelligence and we put things together. So now it's kind of evolved into this very large global network that we utilize for actors, musicians, executives, dignitaries, governmental officials, non-governmental officials, stuff like that.
What are some of the, if you can share, some of the kind of sketchiest places that you've been that, I mean, I have to say, I lived 24 years of my life in Brazil. Uh, uh, I don't, to be honest, I don't know Brazil that well because I lived most of my life in Rio, and I honestly, I maybe know like 6 states in Brazil or something. I don't know. It's just my life was just all around Rio. And when I still go to Rio, I'm not gonna lie. If I go to the city, I'm uneasy. You know what I mean? Because I'm always kind of like, what's going on? Looking over my shoulder, and because I've been robbed before. I've been robbed by
Yeah.
police officers. I've been
Yes.
robbed by thugs. Drug dealers.
Yes.
So I've been in a lot of like crappy scenarios there. But what are some? It sometimes depends like what situation you got into. But what are
Yes.
some of the kind of sketchiest places that
Yeah.
you've been?
There are a lot of things. It's kind of like jujitsu. There are a lot of variables, and how those variables get adjusted determines what move will work and what move won't work. And so it's the same for security. We're trying to go into a place with as much information as we can have about what's happening at that time, what the good guys are doing, what the bad guys are doing, what areas they're in, what their activities are, like what the crimes are that they typically commit in those areas, what time of day they do those things, what time of the year it's more prevalent, when there's spikes or when there's decreases, then who can stop them or who are they afraid of. Even sometimes you may have to go into a neighborhood that you can't really have police in, so you have to pay off some guys for security that are not the good guys. Like, in Brazil, for example, in Rio, uh, the last time that I was there, we had to go in for a charity thing into Mare. And Mare right now is not good. It's a big problem for us. So especially guys looking like me, half our team looks like me, and the other guys are kind of mixed and or black, and so they look like police because they're Kore guys or they're Hota guys, and that's an issue too, right? So now I can't go with those guys because they've been fighting. And at the time, a year ago, there's two different groups fighting each other right there in the middle. So you're on one side fighting, you're on the other side fighting, and we're trying to go in and deal with a non-governmental organization. And this is another thing. The time I'm in there, I have one guy who is very like Lula, and he's pro Lula, and then the guys, security guys that I'm with, are all pro Bolsonaro, and so now I have to manage this aspect of it and the physical threat on the ground. So it's a lot of work in relationships and understanding the components and what's happening and how to address it. Like, we're managing a lot of variables at the same time. Very similar to jujitsu, right? Because every time you get into a certain position, you have weaknesses and you have strengths, and you have to know where they're at, how to manipulate them, how to set the other guy up for what it is you're looking for, and then protect yourself at the same time. And so it's very, very similar to jiu-jitsu, the strategies, the techniques, the ideas, the concepts that we use for protecting people.
Yeah, what scares me, like not in Brazil, but like Mexico too, when man, you cannot trust the law enforcement. You know what I mean? What that is what scares me the most. Of like, oh yeah, who is gonna help me? And in Brazil, like I said, I've been in many situations. Man, in Brazil, I feel like I'm a lot more relaxed here in US, but like in Brazil, I need to be always kind of like scoping the place. about.
Smart, because situational awareness gives you the information you need. It's just like when you're doing jujitsu and you're paying attention to where the guy's hands are, where his feet are, how he's moving his shoulders, how where he's looking. You're doing the same thing, but you're just doing it on the street.
It's
You're
funny.
assessing your environment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've got away from robberies and buses and stuff like that, just reading right before that happened,
Yes.
situations like
Yes.
that. But about it's got to be 2 years ago. I was in Rio for the UFC, and so I got there like maybe Monday night, so we stay for the whole week. Have the lose weight and process and stuff like that. So we're there with the fighters. So I was at the Sheraton in Barra da Tijuca, which is like a nice area,
Yes.
and Sheraton's right across the street from the beach. It's a nice place.
This is not the Sheraton. This is not the Sheraton in Vidigal. So there's a
No,
Vidigal. Go down south, just below Vidigal is the Sheraton. Is that the one you're talking about?
no, this one is
This one is
right
actually
at
in
Baja.
Baja.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right
by Baja
across.
Shopping.
Yeah, like across the street from the beach. So
Yes.
you just basically just cross the street or there. So I got there and they had a little kiosk at night that is a spot that not too many people usually are there. But since the hotel was full, a lot of the staff, the UFC, when they're done at night, they'd go like, "Hey, let's grab a beer in the kiosk across the street." So I remember the first day they had a gas station next to it that was go at night, and I saw people hanging out about 10 at night, and I look at it, and the first thing came my mind was like, how easy to be to jack all those people, because there was like the setup was so easy. It's dark. There's nothing coming. It was just so easy to see it. And then I was like, oh, that's strange. So that was I think maybe Tuesday. No, I think it was maybe Tuesday night, Wednesday night. By the third night, they figured out these guys are coming here every night. They already knew.
Because they established a pattern.
Exactly. Exactly. And then I remember Thursday night, it was probably 11. It was late. I went to the gas station back. We just finished the weight cutting stuff. And then next day, what about, I hear about 12:30, three guys went there. They robbed all 20 people, took all like passports, phones, everything. And that the way they parked the car, the way they knew where to go, everything. You know what I mean? It was actually showing on Sure Dog and showing the New York Times. Like because a bunch of like the employees are now stuck without like a UFC employees without travel. They don't have their passport. They had to contact the embassy. It was this whole mess. But man, in Brazil, um, you have to be aware of what's going on.
Yeah, you have to adapt to your environment. And one of the things too in that situation, like you noted one thing, like lighting conditions, right? So if you look at the lighting conditions, very low lighting, it makes it easier to get in, and they don't detect you early. Like you said, you detected someone that was about to do something. And also you look at how easy it is to get into that parking lot or get out of that parking lot so that you don't get caught. Another thing that they can take advantage of in that situation is fighters, because fighters think that because they can fight, they can deal with something like a gun or a knife or multiple guys. And it doesn't work that way. So they can take advantage of your confidence because you become overly confident in a situation that you're not trained for. So all that stuff, again, very much like jujitsu. But even for example, like if you are in Leblanc. Leblanc's a very nice area, right? You can be like, oh, it's nice. I'm going to Sushi Leblanc and everything's cool. But it's also a great spot to target people because there's a lot of people with a lot of money in that spot and they hit them and they go. It's not just in the favelas where this is happening. And I think a lot of tourists kind of lose that mindset and they kind of detach and they're relaxed and they're not paying attention. And this is where a lot of problems happen in Brazil. But the issues in Brazil are very different from the issues in Mexico. Like kidnapping in Brazil is not a fraction as common, but the violence is very similar. Like not the methods, but the general violence, and also the political components, especially in the last few years within Brazil. Like the volume of political battle between the sides and the things that are happening is pretty extreme situation.
Yeah, I'm gonna for all the listeners, I want you to picture a scenario, and that's something for you to picture the scenario too, Todd. Let's say you're like probably 5 minutes from your house, walking at night, 10 p.m. There's nothing really going on. Suddenly, a car next to you stop. Both have guns, and they say, get in a car. So, for people who are listening, what would you do? Of course, there's a lot of things to take in consideration. It's a kind of broad, like scenario, like what exactly we have. But I've been in that situation before getting home, and that was pretty. That's probably one of the closest that I've been to. Like, okay, uh, that's a wrap. It might be, you know. But that happened with me. I don't. I know someone. Not I know personally, but a case that was very similar to mine. But the guy ended up actually getting shot and ended up in a wheelchair. Because he tried to run.
Mhm.
In my scenario, I was coming back from jiu-jitsu. I was a blue belt. I was in my senior year in high school, and I was walking home. And then where I live, it's like a low middle class area, but surrounded by the favelas and stuff like that. So I'm just walking. I'm not even know, but for the guys who are listening, I don't think I ever shared this story here. I don't remember. But anyway, I was going home, and suddenly I just hear a car just turning, like scratching the tires, and then so I thought it'd be like a friend of mine playing around, like break yourself food type of deal, because I'd done it before. And then I'm walking calm, and then I look to the side, and a Volkswagen Bug, and there's two guys, older gentlemen, gray hair. One already have their gun outside of the window, the other one walk out with a gun, and he's just like, give me the dope, give the dope. I was like, man, I just live down, and I was able to stay calm. I'm like, man, I just live down the street here, man. Just coming from training, from jujitsu or whatever. So, and I'm thinking that's the only gi that I have. That's my worry. Like as a senior, it's like, oh my God, he's gonna take my gi. That's my only gi I have. And so he started grabbing my bag, so he opened, see that, and then I try to grab back, like, man, there's nothing for you to steal. That's what I used the word steal when I said that. And then he turns to me like, do you do you think I'm a scumbag? So he pulls and show his badge. I don't know if the badge was legit
Real.
or not, I don't know. But he tried to kind of like, he probably owned something, some type of drugs, because he was kind of really kind of like agitated, you know. And then when I said that, he turned and he tries to kind of shove it in my face, and I just kind of like step back more in a reflex and put my hand up. So now he's even mad because he thinks that I'm trying to fight. So he turned his gun to the side trying to hit me. So I'm moving back, but I'm still in the mission of my gi. I'm like, dude, like there's nothing, like I just wanted my gi back. There's nothing here for you. And then I just grabbed the bag, and then he grabbed back, and I'm like, man, there's nothing there. It's just a key. And then he goes, get in the car. So and then automatically like, oop, I let go. I saw walking back. I was like, no, no problem. And then that's when it was bad that he went like, he cocked his gun, said, if you run, it's going to be worse. And that by this point, I'm in the middle of the street. I was in a sidewalk, and I saw walking, like, till got to a point that I'm like, I need to run, and I just kind of ran to the sidewalk. In Brazil, people park the car parallel parking, so there's a lot of, so I just kind of ran to the side and tried to run, kind of squatting down and kind of screaming for help. And basically, they reversed and they took off. But I don't know if I did the right thing or the stupid thing. I don't know what's gonna happen if I would get in a car. I could definitely be shot. When I ran, that's what happened with this guy. I watched a documentary on this guy. He's like Paralympic athlete that, because of that, a similar situation he ran, he got shot in his back. And that could totally happen with me. I was probably like, what, 18 years old. Um, in a scenario like that, it's any suggestion. I mean, it's tough for you to kind of picture that, but like,
Yeah.
it's either you get in the car, or you don't, you know what I mean? At that point.
Yeah. So the first thing I would tell you, it's complex what you're presenting, but I have a simple kind of overview for you. Um, there's no move in jujitsu that is one size fits all. Like
Yeah.
anytime somebody does something, just do an armbar. Anytime somebody just do it doesn't work. So every scenario is different. Even with these guys, how many guys there are, where they're at, what the distances are, what the time of day is, what your training is, all these things change. But the first thing is this. The first thing is that the most likely chance of having some problem like this is close to your house. Why? Because you spend most of your time close enough to your house. You're not going super far away. So it's likely to happen there. The good thing about that is we do a thing called baseline anomaly. So the first thing is in your neighborhood, in your realm, you know what is normal activity. You can establish what's a baseline. And when you establish a baseline, that allows you to identify anomalies, something that doesn't fit into the environment. So you have two types of anomalies, right? One anomaly is above the baseline, one anomaly is below the baseline, meaning all of a sudden something is added to the environment that was never there before. That's an anomaly above. And then all of a sudden there was always something there and now it's gone. That's an anomaly below the baseline. Also, there are two types of anomalies. One is a critical anomaly, meaning something that can hurt you. And another one is called a benign anomaly, meaning something is different, something's added or taken away from the normal environment, but it's really doesn't matter because it's not going to hurt you. It's not capable of hurting you. So the first thing is when you know it's in your neighborhood, you know what's normal, you can say, oh, that's not normal. And then I have to make a choice, right? The choice is I either continue doing what I want, I change my behavior, or I cancel it, meaning I'm not going to go that way anymore, right? So you can either change your route or you can go back where you came from, or you can just, you know what, I'm just going to keep walking like I'm walking. So it's continue, change, or cancel when we have those anomalies. Now, one thing that you're not going to know as a senior in high school that would help you make a decision is what they call the TTPs, or tactics, techniques, and procedures of the bad guys in Brazil. What do they normally do? What normally happens in Brazil most of the time, not for very, very rich soccer players, but for an average guy like you or me, they want to do an express kidnapping, meaning I want to get as much as I can from you, and then I want to get away. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
kill you. I don't get anything for killing you most of the time. But if the guy was on some drugs, maybe he doesn't want to do that. Maybe he wants to get rid of the witness, right? So he gets your stuff and he kills you because he's not making a decision that's normal. So it's a very difficult decision for you to make. But like all decisions, just like jujitsu, we have to understand the problem. I have to know that this guy can do a specific move from that position before I can defend it. If I'm not worried about him doing it, it's because I don't know something is possible there. So the first thing is to know what happens in your environment, right? So, okay, I know what the baseline is and I know what the bad guys do. Now, I'll tell you this, the general rule of thumb, the general rule, and this is not all situations, but the general rule is you never get into the car with people because that usually leads to very bad things. Maybe
Yeah.
not in this situation. In Mexico, sometimes the guys get in and they take them far away outside town and they take their clothes and their shoes and whatever. They leave them maybe in their underwear. And the person has to walk back 30 miles to get to where they're going, and they don't kill the person, but they want to take them away from the environment. But you can't plan on that. So 80% of the time, very bad things happen when you get in a car with somebody with a gun. So I think you made the right choice. Yes, sometimes they'll shoot you anyway. Um, but it's better to take that chance, I think. And maybe the guy is a paraplegic now, but he's alive. And maybe if he got in the car with those guys, he wouldn't be alive today. So I think you have to play kind of these odds. And when you look at it, let's say you're watching two slot machines. You know what slot machines are that you
Mm-hmm.
put money into?
Yeah.
So you're playing gambling. And I look at two slot machines and I look at this one on the left and I see that when people play it, 8 out of 10 times they win. And I look at the one on the right and I see them play it, and 8 out of 10 times they lose. I have one coin, just one quarter or one token. If I have to make a decision right now on which one I'm going to play, I'm going to
Got
play
it.
the one that wins 8 out of 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a risk assessment that you make, and you make the best judgment with the information you have in the moment and what you see and you can take in and process in that particular situation. So if I was you, I would have done the same thing. The one little thing that's different, and it's very hard for guys like us who are guys who have a fighting background, jiu-jitsu background, whatever it is, you are ready to fight or deal with a person. And the gi means a lot to you. It means a lot to me. Um, but it doesn't mean enough to lose my life over.
Oh, absolutely.
So our first thought is resistance. Like, you know what? Take it. I can get another gi. I
I
can
know.
get another life. So it's a hard thing for guys like us to do. And in protection, a lot of what we do is not staying and fighting. A lot of what we do is take our clients and we get out
Mm-hmm.
so that we're not in the environment. So the first thing for us is we don't go where there are problems. I had during one period of time in Brazil, a client that wanted to do this charity thing in Complexo do Alemão. And at the time, the military police were going up into Complexo do Alemão and having I think they called it pacification
Yeah.
uh, process. And I'm like, no, we're not going there. Like, no, we're going to go there. And I explained, look, we shouldn't go there because that's where problems happen. They're in the middle of this thing. We're not doing it. So they're the ones that pay the money in the end. I'm there to protect them. They decide to go. So the first thing is don't go where there are problems. The second thing is if you have to go where there are problems, as soon as you see indicators of things going bad, you leave. Don't stay and pull out your iPhone and record, or don't walk to the problem so that you're closer to the problem. Leave. Right? The guy's attacking my collar. I don't sit there and just let him finish the choke, right? I see he grabs, oh, I take the grip off. I don't want that, right? Because that leads to a problem. And then the last thing is if you can't leave, to stay and fight. But that's the last thing for us. First is don't go where there are problems. Second is if you have to go where there are problems and you see, because like you're analyzing your situation, you're looking around, you're aware of your surroundings, you have situational awareness. I see, oh, that's happening and that's happening. Those things together mean something really bad is about to happen. I'm leaving and I get as far away as I can, as quick as I can. And then the last thing, obviously, as I mentioned, okay, I'm stuck here now. This guy's attacking me. I got to fight back.
Yeah. Now, just change gear, but still around the same topic. I would love to hear your personal opinion about martial art training for law enforcement officers. As you already know, it's an issue in the country. So I'd love to hear like your view and possible solutions to minimize the damage of a lot of officers literally not having a clue what to do.
So this is a conversation I've been having a lot on a lot of different podcasts with a lot of different people in the community. And it also, like everything, is complex. It's not just one simple answer to solve the problem. The first thing is that the society has to accept or realize that these guys need more training, which means more tax dollars to fund the training. And so in the academy, they need realistic programs. So there are a lot of different defensive tactics programs. Not all of them are realistic. Not all of them are something you can apply under stress. One of the beautiful things about combat sports, and I'm just going to call it four things, right, for us: jujitsu, wrestling, Muay Thai, and boxing. Those are combat sports. And when you train, you do the thing that you're going to do in a fight in training. Unfortunately, with a lot of stuff that some law enforcement agencies teach, they actually don't do the thing. Oh, you're going to stick your finger in their eye, or you're going to grab their throat, or you're going to hit this pressure point, or you're going to, and it's not realistic, right? So the beauty of combat sports, they're very realistic. You learn that you have a problem, you analyze it, and you solve it. And every time it's hard, and you finish and you keep fighting until the end, and then there's another fight, and then there's another fight. And we learn that through, rounds in jiu-jitsu or rounds in Muay Thai or boxing or wrestling. So they need to have the money for it. They need to have the understanding that it needs to be done, and they need to modify it to make it realistic for the most common scenarios law enforcement officers face. And then they need to get good instructors who understand the difference between point jujitsu and fighting with a bunch of stuff on. So, for example, if you're fighting in a controlled space with a referee, with a time limit, with a belt class, with a weight class, with an age class, that's nothing like fighting in the street when you have on your waist, you have a gun, you have magazines, two or three magazines, you have OC spray, what you call mace, you have an asp or a baton, you have a taser, you have a camera, you have all this stuff on you, right? And you're not going to be able to move around like you do with a kimono on. And you're fighting now on concrete, and there's curbs around, and there's cars, and you don't have to worry about, when you're doing jujitsu, other people running into the fight and kicking you in the head and taking your gun and shooting you. That's not real. So a lot of stuff also, these guys deal with people that are on drugs. Like you mentioned, the guy that attacked you, he was on something, you think. Moves that we do, like breaking limbs, like an armbar, a guy on extreme drugs doesn't feel the pain from that. So this is not the appropriate movement for these guys, right? These guys need control positions where they can affect cuffing from. These guys need positions where they can render someone who's bigger, stronger, meaner, who's attacking with a weapon, with what they call something like, you'd call a rear naked choke. It's called a lateral vascular neck restraint, to slow the blood down or limit the amount of blood going to their brain. They need the ability to do these things, and society has to accept it. Then the local government has to accept it. Then the agency has to accept it. And then they have to put it into training, and then they have to write it into their policies that these things are acceptable. So my opinion is, first things first, jujitsu is for sure the best thing for law enforcement to learn, because it's the softest, gentlest. Yes, there's hardcore jujitsu, But realistically, the fights start standing up, but they end on the ground. And so when they're trying to effect an arrest, when they're trying to put the handcuffs on the guy, that's where 90 some odd percent of use of force, where fights occur with police officers. So we know that. So they get into grappling. Well, grappling, whoever controls the space typically controls the fight. Now we have to learn how to protect our gun and stop them from taking out their gun. Now we have to learn how to fight inside cars, against doors, on the ground, under cars. These things are something that jujitsu guys don't do because they don't need to, but police officers need to. So basically, what I'm saying is they need a special form of jujitsu modified for police in a uniform with their gear, dealing with someone who's trying to kill them, take their gun, or kill someone else. We adapt jujitsu for that, just like we adapt jujitsu for MMA. We make it specific for law enforcement. We put them through these scenarios. They do high repetition with high stress, and they do it regularly. They can't just do it in a police academy. Let's say they're in a 6-month long academy and they get 1 month of jujitsu. That's not enough for anybody. It's not enough for a guy that comes in here in my gym. It's going to take him 2 years to get to a blue belt if he trains 3 times a week. So the idea that you're going to train a guy for a month in a police academy and then somehow he can do it under real life stress, not in a jiu-jitsu tournament, not in a sparring class, but in real life, it's not real. So what we need to do is mandate that, yes, you're doing it in the academy, but also you have this regular, what they call in-service training. So your agency makes you do it, or they buy you a membership to a gym and you're able to go there and train. And maybe you as a gym owner are having a law enforcement specific class that deals with these kinds of problems, right? For example, if I'm doing something like a body lock takedown, I want to pull my arm out before we hit the ground because I don't want this guy that I'm taking down who's 250 to land on my arm and maybe there's a curb right there, right? These kinds of things are how we need to think. Also, let's say, think about this. All the cop's tools are on his waistline. What happens when someone puts him in the guard? What happens? He can't access any of that because the legs are there, the hips are there, all that stuff's gone now. So he needs to really be able to prevent someone from wrapping their legs around all of his tools. Think about this. How am I keeping my gun inside my holster when this guy's grabbing it? That's something that jiu-jitsu needs to incorporate. And I don't mean, these knife takeaways, gun takeaways, that crazy stuff that's not real. I just mean very simple techniques you can do under stress. So all of that's available. A lot of stuff's out there. I know GST is getting a big following now. We run a program specifically for law enforcement with state and federal agencies, but it's geared toward law enforcement, right? It's not BJJ for a tournament. It's not BJJ for MMA. It's BJJ for law enforcement. So 100% jujitsu first, and then they need to learn other things like boxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, but jujitsu, it's a great solution for law enforcement. It's a great tool. And
Yeah.
also, one last thing, when you have jujitsu and when you develop it and you really understand how it works, the number one byproduct of that is confidence. And when you have that confidence, you're less likely to fight these guys overly aggressive. You're less likely to go to your gun because you have a high level of confidence. So it does a lot of things. The physical fitness, they're in shape. You develop their brain. They have solutions and options. In jiu-jitsu, they build the camaraderie with the other law enforcement officers. So there's a lot of things to benefit. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you, buddy.
Yeah, no, I have a few students who are police officers too, and a good friend of mine that is one of my black belts, been training with me for over 20 years, just retired as police officer. But something that he always talked about too, it's like the amount of officers that they're not willing to put the time to get the skills to improve. There's a very small, I mean, the tiny percentage of guys that take their own responsibility, look for a gym because they know, like, and one thing that even when I work with officers have done some seminars or whatever, I always take my friend with me because I say, like, I never fought for my life. I mean, anytime that an officer getting some type of scrap, literally fighting for your life. You don't know, whoever doesn't want to go back to prison or whatever, they're willing to kill someone not to go back. You never know.
In an
So
uncontrolled environment, not
yeah.
on soft mats, not with your friends, not without weapons. So it's much more complex, much more intense.
So do you feel that, do you notice that resistance to from officers?
Yeah. So on my side of things, fortunately for me, when I was a law enforcement officer, I was very active at shooting. I was very active at fighting. I was very active at fitness because I love those things. But a large percentage are not. One thing that's happened in our society is we've stopped regulating certain things, right? So for most police agencies, they don't mandate certain components like fitness. Like you don't have to have a fitness test. Well, that's a little bit crazy because fitness is what's going to save their life, but not just their life, the other officers' lives who they're protecting, or the citizens' lives who they're protecting. So we need to probably mandate a little bit more training. We need to have a little bit more oversight of this type of training. One of the things that stops it or slows it down is this fear of getting hurt, right? Because when you train intense, when you train hard, you get hurt. It happens. I'm sitting here talking to you with a torn MCL, a torn meniscus, and I trained today for 2 hours. There's ways around it. We can reduce those injuries through training. Their biggest concern is if I have to pay you, Gustavo, to come to work as a police officer today and you get hurt, I still have to pay you, but now I'm down one guy. So I have to figure out how I'm going to pull that in. And it costs me a lot of money, plus workers' comp and all these other components. So there's a way to do it, but we have to understand that risk is much smaller and much less significant than the loss of life. And preservation of life is generally the focus of all law enforcement agencies. First, the community, and then other officers.
What are some of the best programs that you've seen as far as I don't know if police academies or not necessarily police academy, but like any states that you see like, wow, they're doing a good job.
Yeah. Just actually, it's funny you should ask that because um, where I'm at right now is a unique spot. I'm in Missouri, and most people wouldn't think of it as a leader or anything, but oddly enough, the Missouri State Highway Patrol is doing Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, and wrestling with a focus, a very heavy focus on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they've been doing that for 15 years, and they're doing pressure testing of everything they're doing. They're really, really leading the way, and not in the last year or 3 years or 5 years. This has been a long period of time that they've done this. There was a guy named Kirk Davis who is a captain on the Highway Patrol who brought it 15 years ago, and the programs continue to develop. And I think the command staff, the people that are in charge, really see the value of this. So again, they get confidence, they get camaraderie, they get fitness, they get flexibility, and on top of that, they're developing these skills that are going to help the community. They're going to help to save people, and they're also not going to be as quick to act. So yes, there are a few agencies that are adopting it, and I see slowly a change across the United States toward law enforcement. Now there's 3 or 4 different groups that you'll see on social media that, like Adopt a Cop and whatever entity. A lot of cops now have access, if they want to train for free. But the problem, like you said, isn't that. The problem is the guy's got to be willing to come in and take his own time to learn how to save his life. And that's true not just with defensive tactics, but also with firearms. They got to train off duty because there's just not enough time in the day for them to get all of the training they need. Look, they need driver training, they need law training, they need first aid training, they need, now they do a lot of sensitivity and cultural awareness training. There's so many different trainings that they need, and that the whatever governing body for us here, we have what's called post. Post is the standards, and so that division will oversee how many hours they need of each thing. And unfortunately, defensive tactics typically get cut out. So I agree that we need it. I see a lot more support for it. It's going in the right direction. The only question is it going fast enough? Is there enough community support for it? Is there enough law enforcement officers pushing behind it? And so far, I see maybe 300% more than I saw 5 years ago, which is a big deal. So
Yeah.
I think we're going in the right direction. I hear a lot of good messaging from police, and they understand there's a problem. They understand they need it. They're trying to get away from the silliness of pressure points and get into the reality of jujitsu and having control in these situations. So I think we're going there. And in the dozen states that I've worked with and the federal agencies that I've worked with, like I said here, these guys have really been on top of it, and makes me happy to live here when I see that.
Awesome. Now let's talk about your most recent book, Protection for and from Humanity. So tell us more about the context of the book, how long it's been around. So yeah, tell us more about it.
Yeah, so this is my third book. Protection for and from Humanity is me implying that what creates the problem is people, but what solves the problem is people, and what, again, the opposite. We create our problems, we need to solve them. We are the solution to any problem, and really, your brain is your primary weapon. That's the thing that's going to solve the problem for you. And so, in this book, which came out in October last year, I really write it for the average person, for the private citizen who doesn't know anything about the military or law enforcement or any of these different protective systems. And it's a common sense approach to learning these systems. How do I deal with certain issues? How do I protect myself? For example, how do I protect my house? How do I create these layered security approaches to my house? How far away does it start? Do I have a fence? Do I have a dog? Do I have cameras? Do I have good lighting? Do I have an alarm? Do I have a plan for how I operate in my house in the dark? Where does my family go? Where do I go? Do I use weapons? What type of weapons? What are the local laws? What can I do legally? What can I not do legally? What other networks do I have in my neighborhood to help me? What is the normal response time for police? So talking about some simple stuff like that, and then getting into a few more complex systems, and how we are able to deter people from ever selecting us as a target, how we're able to um, delay them once they do select us, right? How we're able to deny them or defend ourselves, how we're able to mitigate, right? Because after you defend yourself, maybe that person gets hurt and now they're suing you. So that's another component. We talk a lot about overseas travel, right? If I'm going to Brazil, what do I need to know? Right? What's going to happen? Well, I know I'm going to be at the airport. I know I'm going to be at a hotel. I know I'm going to be in a car moving on the roads. And maybe I need to understand by going to the State Department's website and looking at a crime and safety report that there are a lot of tunnels in Rio. And sometimes the bad guys come out of the favelas, they
Hmm.
block either end of the tunnel, and they go through with their guns. And now, if in my security detail is a police officer from Secore, and now they find his badge, they kill him immediately. They
Hmm.
find the badge, they kill him. So I need to understand how those things work. How do I plan for it? Well, simple way is take the beach road. Don't go through the tunnels when you don't have to go through the tunnel, or change the time of day that you go, because if you look at the history of when they make the attacks, when they block the either end of the tunnel, when they go through and do whatever, it's consistent. So I can see a pattern, and then I adjust according to the pattern. So we talk a lot about that, who can help you, how they can help you, what insurance policies you can get, what different people do in different places. But basically, it gives a normal person access to information, systems, strategies on how to approach their safety, the safety for their business or for their family, their kids, things like that.
I see. It's very interesting you talking about the patterns, because it plays a movie in my mind being a teenager, and then that's crazy. But you start to identify. I've been robbed on a bus once, and I've got away probably between 7 and 10 times. Different stuff that I was like, they if there's two people, usually they go as soon they get together, one sit in one door, they all sit the other door. I'm like, oh, I'm like, I'm out because I that's how I got robbed before. You know what I mean? Like you just see they're very
Yes.
sketchy how they go in,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that's
So,
crazy how
so
like you're young having to figure this out too.
yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we talk about in there is something called equation manipulation. So earlier I mentioned, like, you have these variables that lead up to an outcome. So let's say A plus B plus C equals X, and X is a bad thing. I don't want X to happen. So if I know what those variables are, like the time, the place, and the method of attack, I can start to manipulate that stuff. So I don't go to the place where there are problems, which I mentioned earlier. And then I leave when something happens, or I notice something like, okay, I see this thing happening here, and I'm going to remove myself from the equation. So if I'm C in the equation, C is gone. The attack can't happen to me. So it's just learning how to manipulate these equations so that you're safe. You say safe, or you say safer. It's impossible to be 100% safe if you're a human, but you can certainly take measures to be safer. Just like jujitsu, you don't put yourself in certain positions, you don't have to worry about that for the most part. So this book I think is a great book. In fact, if you remind me when we're done, I'll send you a copy,
Hmm.
and I think you're gonna like it because it's gonna really relate to your growing up in Brazil and some of the things you see happening. But more than that, it's gonna really relate to jujitsu for you. You're gonna be like, this is the same as jujitsu. This is the same as jujitsu. One of the things that we talk about is the decision making cycle, right? Something called the OODA loop, OODA. That was created by a fighter pilot named John Boyd in the Air Force. And what he found was that as he's in a dogfight with aircraft in the air, he has to observe the other plane. He has to orient or adjust to it. He has to decide what he's going to do, and then he has to act. So
Hmm.
observe, orient, decide, and act. Now, in jujitsu, it's the exact same thing. It's
True.
literally the same thing before you can cycle through. And then every time the guy really makes a major change in his position, you have to start the OODA loop again because now I have to observe where he's at. I have to orient or adjust to my body where it's at. I have to decide what technique I'm going to do, and then I have to do it. And so, this decision making cycle, generally speaking, whoever's able to cycle through it the fastest typically wins the fight. Now, that
Hmm.
was talking about dogfights with aircraft, but it's true in jujitsu too. If I
It
can see the
is.
problem, I know what it is, I throw the defense to it, and then I start an attack, and I cycle through it the quickest. One thing that happens is that while I'm seeing it quicker and I'm doing whatever, I'm expanding the OODA loop of the other guy. So now all of a sudden he's getting overwhelmed because what he thought was there is no longer there, and I'm changing the game on him. So it's taking longer to go through that same cycle. I cycled through quick, and as I'm going through quick, he's realizing it, and then his is getting bigger, and now it's taking him longer to cycle through it.
Awesome. Now, let's talk about going back to jujitsu a little bit. One of the best piece of advice that you've learned along the way in jujitsu, especially when you look back, maybe the early days, that's things that you can share today with beginners. Uh, I don't know, something that stand out to you.
Uh, First of all, there's no way to not get a benefit from jujitsu if you just keep coming. That's all. The main
True.
trick is you come and you don't stop coming. One thing too for me, and I'm sure you've had this experience. As you get older, you lose a little bit of it, but you're gonna lose. It's part of life, and it's part of jujitsu, and it's part of learning. It's part of the process. You got to find a way to not see the loss as a bad thing. To say, yes, I don't like losing. I want to win, but part of me getting to that point where I'm going to win most of my fights is losing in the process and having these experiences. The trick is to figure out what I did wrong and try never to do that same thing again. And a lot of guys get caught up in it. And I think also, like going back to the police thing, a lot of police don't want to do it because when they come in, you have these little kids kicking your ass and it's embarrassing.
Hmm.
And you don't want to just say, okay, it's part of the process. I need to just suck it up and deal with this kid beating me and figure out how to beat him. So I think those are the two big factors. And I also think another thing, and when I started, we really didn't talk a lot about this. Now I think it's more known, but to find a style, to find a system, to find a way that complements your body type. So if you're tall and long or short, if you're skinny or if you're thick, if you're aggressive, like really going after stuff, or if you're very defensive in nature, to find something that complements that. And then to find a guy who has a similar style that works for you, and then try to incorporate those pieces into your game. And we both know that anything can work in jujitsu, but the truth is, you can't just intermix pieces for a guy after he develops some type of game, right? So we talked about that in terms of like you have a Ferrari, which is a great car, you have a Lamborghini, which is a great car, but you can't take the parts out of the Ferrari and put them in the Lamborghini and Lamborghini in the Ferrari. It won't work. So to really develop a game based on how they think, how they feel, how they like it, and ultimately what their goal is. If their goal is MMA or street, or if their goal is gi jiu-jitsu or no gi, uh, and really work on that specific thing. It should be able to cross over into other realms, but they should have a focal point based on those things. So never quit, just keep coming in, even though you're getting beaten up. To really have a focus on what your objective is, right? And to accept that you're going to lose, you're going to have bad days, and your life happens around you while you're doing jujitsu. You're going to have your work, and things are going to be good, and things are going to be bad, and you're going to feel good and bad physically. You're going to get sick, or you're going to get an injury, and you're going to have to start again. And you have to accept that early on. And if you do, the process is not only easier, but it's more fun because you kind of understand where you're at in the cycle. I know what's coming. I'm on this end. I'm going to get that on the other end. And so for me, those are kind of the tricks that I would tell young guys coming in right now.
Yeah, and what about for you? If you could give a piece of advice to the young Todd when he was training in the '90s, something that'd be like, yeah, I didn't do that because you just didn't know better. But you look back, you could have a little chat with him, like, yo,
Yeah.
this year, what do you say?
Yeah. I the first of all, I gotta say, between Rodrigo Vaghi and Hickson, I had great mentors, guys that really led me down the right path. So I have nothing to change there. But for me, one thing is to, I should have seen it more as a 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 year period versus like a 1 month or 3 month period. I was seeing things in very short windows. So I would tell myself to look, your goal isn't just this one moment. Your goal is across time to keep getting better. And some of that includes things that are not pleasant. Also, I think I would have spent more time, and I know this now because I'm older. I would have spent more time taking care of my injuries and spending more time stretching, warming up, doing things because now, as I get close to 50 years old, all the stuff I did before is now coming back to haunt me because all those little injuries got worse and worse and worse over time. And so actually I'm wearing this shirt. And by the way, they have a couple in Phoenix where you're at. So Restore is a place that does cryo and hyperbaric oxygen tanks and local cryo on joints. And they do like infrared saunas. So instead of, kind of, okay, I'm just training hard and okay, just suck it up. I wouldn't have done that. I would now go back and say, train smart, have a systematic approach to how you're doing it, spend a lot of time stretching and warming up on the front end, spend a lot of time stretching and cooling down on the back end, and take breaks when you need them. Yes, train hard, but space out those breaks in the right way and do things that will help you. So when you're young, when I was young, I won't talk about you, but when I was young, I was dumb, running around, partying and chasing girls. And that didn't help me to recover. So
For
maybe
sure.
instead of going out doing this as much, back off a little bit of that and spend some time recovering. Go do cryo or go do a stretching session or just go outside and work on your breathing, something for recovery. So those would be my main takeaways for myself if I was talking to my younger self.
Cool. We're getting close to the end of the interview. So, what do you got exciting going on that you can share with everyone? And then I'll add the link to of your website and everything. But what do you got to share?
Well, what's really cool right now for us is that our music component's coming back. So music concerts are coming back. We have
Ah,
a lot of very big clients that are going out on
nice.
tour. One of our clients, Nine Inch Nails, is getting ready to go out. Journey's getting ready to go out. The Eagles are going out. The beginning of next year, Tool's going out. So a lot of these activities are happening for us. We're coming back to life from COVID. I see a lot more gym openings in different places where I'm at. We've been open, but these things are great for me because if I start traveling with these entities, I need a jujitsu school to go to. And if the schools are closed down, that's not good. So a lot of stuff opening up, looking good, feeling good, man. I hope most of the people that are watching this took this time this last year to really improve themselves because
Yeah.
we got a year of slowing things down and not being able to do certain things. Hopefully they used it wisely. So for me, it's been a good year, man. Really good year.
Right on.
How about
So,
you?
man, I can't complain. Same thing. The school is open, and I can complain. It's performing well. And now I have another business that I promote tournaments. So I've been doing that for 20 years nonstop. I've been promoting tournaments nonstop since 1998, and of course every year getting more and more and more. But yeah, we paused for a year and a half since the last one was February last year. So now we're gonna have our first one back in August. So excited to get this going on. So there's a big competition scene in Arizona that I'm very proud that I helped to build starting in 2000 with just in-house tournament with 40 people doing in-house tournaments for 4 years, and then to eventually start renting a little venues and start getting a little bigger and stuff. So with the community growing, so we have a lot. And I'm a fan. I'm a fan of what competitions can do for you, because I believe I always mention here for everyone that is yes for everyone that is listening that listen to my spiel before, they know that I always mention jujitsu. Yes, it's a personal development tool. You don't need to compete in order to get the benefits of jujitsu. However, competition is a great way to amplify the power of this tool, to be tested under pressure. How
Yes, sir.
emotionally can you handle all that? So
Absolutely.
that is my, I try to inspire my students to compete now because of that, the personal development aspect. The competing, I already went through the phase of like, let's build a world champion. I already passed this phase. I'll help people as much as you can, but I love to like just introduce competition to them. You do whatever you want with it, but people don't realize sometimes how much anxiety they have until they put in a situation like that. I'm like, oh, hello, you know?
Yes. And you are forced to manage that anxiety, not by taking a pill, but by using
Yeah.
your brain and calming down and breathing and understanding that it's normal. Look, I'm going to go in here and we're going to do these things. And it's just part of a process. And yes, I feel that I can use that for or against me. And yeah, I agree. I agree. Competition, to your point, one of the things is Rodrigo was really big on us competing in gi, no gi, and MMA. Uh, and the greatest takeaway for me is exactly your point. Like to just become okay with being in bad positions, to just become okay with feeling that stress, the butterflies, like, okay, this is just part of the process. This is normal and I can manage it. And you learn how to manage that. And I think that applies to all of your life. You start to learn how to manage the stress, the anxiety, the chaos that occurs from the outside because you deal with it on the inside first.
Yes. And one of the things that I always talk with parents who are just starting, like just of a select group that are interested in competing, and I kind of like I was starting to do a little work on a side with them, and I tell the parents like one of the biggest lessons that competition, especially in jiu-jitsu, taught me is that you don't always get the outcome that you want anytime you want. I'm going to compete, I'm going to win. Well, it's not always like that, you know what I mean? And teach the kids young that you're not going to win every time. You're not going to get every job that you apply for. You're not going to close every account that, you know, or whatever. It's like accepting that not always things will go your way.
Absolutely. It's training for life, isn't it? Because that's how life works.
It really is. And so I feel that even this is like a almost like a silly question, but if you think about your martial arts career, your jiu-jitsu journey, if you think about it, okay, let's compare my journey without any type of competition whatsoever, just training, and with, for sure, you to know how to defend yourself, no doubt, you to be confident, but the emotional growth, it doesn't even compare.
No, no, because the thing is that I was nervous walking to the ring or the cage. I was nervous in each fight. Like it was nerve. Eh, You learn how to manage that. You learn how to assess yourself. You learn kind of what makes you feel that, what takes it away. You start to understand yourself, and then you start to be okay with it. And it's okay, cool. This is just part of the process. And I know if I eat this or drink this, it might change a little bit. If I look at this, or I sit in the sun, or if I breathe like this, or and you start to figure yourself out. And so I agree. Competition was a huge benefit. And you're the first person actually that's brought that up to me that if I thought about myself knowing all the same stuff I know, but not having competed, what would be different? And it would be very different.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. That's a great point. I'm going to ask some
Yeah.
other guys that because for me, I wouldn't be the same person.
Mhm. I have one of my best friends, Bruno Bastos. He's one of the most. He got a school in Texas. He's one of the most experienced guys. One of that I know. One of my most experienced friends has been competing nonstop since he's 10 years old. He's like 40 right now, like nonstop. He's a maniac. He just loves way too much competition. But a few years ago, we were talking and about like the same idea, and I mentioned his like, yeah, jujitsu changed your life. Or like, yeah, it did, but like competition really changed your life if you look into it. And he stopped to think about it. It's true, because if it's just the training, it's awesome and it's great, but adding that amplifier there, man, even was, you see people talking all the time, you know, giving the suggestion to people, man, try at least once just to see how you feel. You know what I mean? And now if you feel super anxious, do it again. You know what I mean? That's the idea.
Yeah.
You know, so it comes
Yeah.
with time. So
It's an exposure to a unique stress. And in a way, the more that you have these little exposures, it's an inoculation, right? It doesn't mean it goes away completely, but it reduces the effect over time because you learn how to manage it and you don't feel the same. And as you start to learn how to manage it and you don't feel that same level of nerves, you calm down quicker and even easier. And you're absolutely right. You can be in the school and get a little bit of it from sparring, right, in the very beginning stages, but then you know everybody's game, and then they're your good friends, and so it doesn't create that level of stress that competition does. You're right. It's an awesome tool. The competition itself, regardless of whether you win or lose, or
Yeah,
what your objective even is, or what you're trying to get to, the experience is a great exposure to stress and exposure to who you are on the inside and learning how to manage it. I agree with you 100%.
absolutely. Todd, thank you so much, man. Really appreciate your time. Awesome conversation. I hope
Thank
people
you,
got some good
Gustavo.
takeaways. I'll add some of the links here and people can look you up your work. So I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
All right. Take care, guys. See you guys soon. Oos.
Us.